See, we were primarily discussing the emergence of post-colonialism, but before that, we have to understand that there are certain terms which are very important. One is imperialism, another is colonialism, and related term is colonization, and then decolonization. Okay, and then comes the term post-colonialism. Okay, so we were talking about capital, the connection between capitalism and colonialism in the last class, right? That we could understand that without the nexus between capitalism and colonialism, European modernity wouldn't exist, and that's why we have said that at the heart of European modernity, at the heart of Europe's modern history, there is the nexus between colonialism and capitalism. Okay, so the birth of European modernity was in many ways parented by this partnership of capitalism and colonialism. And if you want to know more about modernity, you have to go back to my YouTube channel, and then you have to search for the video on modernity, which comes on under the playlist lectures on modernism, okay, early 20th century literature. So there I have explained the term modern, modernity, modernism. So primarily modernity refers to a condition which has to deal with the Enlightenment, which has to deal with progress, development, industrialization, right? So Europe is known for that. It was actually an icon of modernity, right? It has been an icon of modernity till today. But then what lies with this icon of modernity, what lies beneath this icon, is the history of colonialism. Without the nexus between capitalism and colonialism, Europe wouldn't have been modernized in this way, in this grand scale. Remember the last example, or if you go through my video, you would understand that in the last class we gave an example that there is an island where you have several rich people, but then there are, or perhaps you own an island, you are the richest one, you have plenty of money, but you do not have labor. So how would you actually develop yourself? How would you build big houses? How would you build big factories if you don't have labor? Only money won't actually allow you to develop. Okay, so what you will do, you will try to have more laborer. So in the next island, in the adjacent island, you have laborers only. There are people, but no money at all almost. Okay, they are starving. So you would hire a few people, you would take them to your land, to your island, and you would make them work, and in that way you would continuously grow. And then after that, the products that you are making with their labor, after investing money, they are working for you, right, as laborer. So the products that they are making, you need to sell them, right? You are selling it in your island, but then again there are less buyers because the population of your island is very less. So what you do, you again take them, those finished products, to the previous island where there are plenty of people, and they would start buying things. Now they have money because some of them are working in your island, so some money you have. So this is how your system would work continuously. Okay, this is a very gross example to understand how the nexus between colonialism and capitalism works. So this is precisely what happens. Now, what happened in the case of British colonization of India? Now, if we think of the terms, imperialism is basically an ideological project. What does this mean? Ideological project means it's a system of ideas. Okay, whatever knowledge you have, you cannot have it as it is there, right? For example, if you want to know about thing A, that particular thing is only known to you through a system of thoughts, because you are not the first person to look at it. You are walking down the streets and you suddenly discover something that is known as thing A. ধরে নাও কথার কথা বলছি, thing A ওটার নাম, THING, thing A ওটার নাম, কোনো নাম নেই ওটার, তুমি প্রথম ডিসকভার করলে, সেটা তুমি ডিসকভার করে you are looking at it for the first time, you can hold it, you can see it, you are the first one to see it, so whatever you tell about it, people would believe you, right? But this is not how we know things. Right? How do we know things? We know things through ideas, preconceived ideas. And what are those preconceived ideas? They are all in circulation all the time. Right? Think of the idea of woman. What is a woman? Can you define, can you actually make any kind of statement where you can delineate certain essential features of women which would be differentiating them from men, apart from biological truth, apart from biology? are there any intellectual differences, are there any kind of differences which would be psychologically justifiable to say that no, there are different, they are different, man is different, woman is different. No, but we have been believing in this, and that's why in Durgapur we had to build this college for exclusively for women, because women were always excluded from education, women were excluded in the society, they were marginalized in the society. Okay, so that's why we need affirmative actions of this sort, where we need to have reservations for women, where we need to give women more access to education. That's why exclusively schools are being established, exclusively colleges are being established for women. Why? Because women have been deprived for a long time. Okay, they have been deprived of their fundamental rights, right to education, because it was believed that women are incapable of working outside. They are good homemakers, they can actually do the household chores in a better way, and man is a person, man is a human being who can go out and work. So men should be taught, men should be schooled, men should be educated, and they should work harder and harder, and they should be the breadwinner, okay, bread earner for the family. So this was an idea that later on got challenged, but then there were times when this idea was actually the truth for many women. Actually, it was the truth. So how is it possible that in some part, some historical point, one idea becomes truth, and then in another historical point, that idea gets becomes null and void? How is it possible? Then you may say that, well, it is only possible because we have been enlightened, we have been taught to understand that this is a wrong idea, right? But then this was considered to be a knowledge once upon a time, that women are like this, they are to be put inside the houses, they should not go out, they should be always kept inside the houses. This was knowledge, but then now the knowledge has completely changed. Okay, now the knowledge has completely changed. Data. Yes, 1:30. So now the knowledge has completely changed. Now this entire idea of, so then now the knowledge is that women and men are equal, they should both get education. Okay, so when a girl child is born, we always say that no, she should be schooled, she should go to school, she should work harder, she would be intellectually perhaps more capable than boys, or perhaps equally capable. Okay, so these things are in circulation. Now this has become the knowledge. Then what is knowledge then? Knowledge is not something like the thing A that you discover on street. Knowledge is something that is in circulation, and knowledge can only be accessed through a system of ideas. Now the system of ideas that taught you means, I'm not referring to you personally, but women, that you are inferior to men, you should remain inside the home. The system of ideas that taught women to remain inside the home, right, inside their houses, and do the household chores, that system is known as patriarchal system, right? ওটার একটা নাম আছে, ওটা প্যাট্রিয়ার্কাল সিস্টেম। ওই সিস্টেমটা আস্তে আস্তে চ্যালেঞ্জড হয়েছে, নতুন সিস্টেম এসছে, বুঝতে পারছো? তেমনি ইম্পিরিয়ালিজম একটা সিস্টেম যেটা কি করছে, প্যাট্রিয়ার্কি যেমন, as patriarchy justified the very idea of men's superiority over women, similarly imperialism justifies the idea that there are certain human beings who are living in Europe, they are racially superior, they are intellectually more superior than rest of the world, and that's why they have all the right to go away, or perhaps control other countries without going away, okay, and establish their empire. Imperialism কথাটা empire থেকে এসেছে, but it has nothing primarily to do with, nowadays it has nothing primarily to do with the idea of emperor বা king, এই আইডিয়াগুলোর সাথে কিন্তু it has nothing to do with that, right? Primarily it refers to a system, an ideological project which upholds, which tries to legitimize the economic and military control of one nation by another. একটা নেশন আরেকটা নেশনের দখল করে রাখবে জায়গা, তাদের রিসোর্সগুলোকে ইউজ করবে, গিয়েও করতে পারে, না গিয়েও করতে পারে, দূর থেকে করা যেতে পারে। এই পুরো আইডিয়াটাকে লেজিটিমাইজ করে ইম্পিরিয়ালিজম, বুঝতে পেরেছো? যেমন প্যাট্রিয়ার্কি লেজিটিমাইজ করতো মহিলাদের বাড়িতে থাকাটাকে। বুঝতে পারলাম কি বলছি? এইভাবে বুঝতে হবে তোমাকে, হ্যাঁ। আচ্ছা, তাহলে কলোনিয়ালিজম জিনিসটা কি? কলোনিয়ালিজম হচ্ছে is only one form of practice, one modality of control which results from the ideology of imperialism. এই ইম্পিরিয়ালিজমের মধ্যেই colonialism ঢুকে আছে। যখন তুমি ওই যে যেই নেশন আরেকটা নেশনকে কন্ট্রোল করছে, যখন ফিজিক্যালি যখন যাচ্ছে, when the nation which is controlling another nation goes to that nation and controls them physically by being there, that has to do with colonialism. Okay, so it specifically concerns the settlement of people in a new location. Okay, and imperialism is not strictly concerned with the issue of settlement, and it does not demand the settlement of different places in order to function. So there are three aspects of colonialism. One is the settlement of land, another is the economic aims that lie at the heart of colonialism, and then of course there is this unequal relations of power which colonialism constructs between colonizing and native peoples. So the colonizer is always more powerful, okay, than the colonized, and that is the idea that is the idea that gets legitimized through colonialism. Colonialism, like patriarchy, as patriarchy justifies the idea of men's superiority over women, colonialism tries to legitimize or justify the idea of, say, Western human beings, West superiority over the East, or West superiority over Africa or Asia, and so on and so forth. বুঝতে পেরেছো? এক দলের সুপিরিয়রিটি অন্যদের উপর যে আছে সেটা এস্টাবলিশ করার চেষ্টা করছে। প্যাট্রিয়ার্কি করছে মহিলাদের আর পুরুষদের ক্ষেত্রে, যে পুরুষরা বেটার, ইন্টেলেকচুয়ালি মোর কেপেবল, মোর র্যাশনাল। কলোনিয়ালিজম সেটাকে করছে কাদের? সেটলাররা বেটার, যারা সেটেল করছে তারা বেটার। বুঝতে পেরেছো? সো অ্যান্ড তারপরে আমি যে কথাটা বলতে চাইছি সেটা হচ্ছে there are two types of colonies. One is the settler colony, where people are going and settling there and being part of that country, untying themselves from their mother country, and at the same time almost eliminating or violently crashing the native civilization, native culture, native languages, native communities. On the other hand, we have colonies of occupation like India and Kenya, where the settlers are not being part of that place, where the settlers are actually coming back to their mother country because they still maintain the ties with their mother country. Okay, that is the idea. So now we have another term, decolonization. So we have understood what is imperialism, what is colonialism roughly. Now we go for another term which is known as decolonization. Decolonization is a process. It is a very complex process. Okay, let me remind you that decolonization is not a movement, it's a process. Okay, that reveals and dismantles colonialist power in all its forms. Okay, so decolonization works against colonial discourse, colonialism. Colonialism tries to justify or legitimize one nation's superiority over another, the superiority of the settler over the natives. Decolonization is a process that goes against it. It tries to dismantle the power of the colonist, the facade of power that the colonizer creates around him. This includes dismantling the hidden aspects of those institutional and cultural forces that had maintained the colonialist power and that remain even after political independence is achieved. Okay, so that's why I told you that decolonization is not a moment in history. It cannot be. It's an ongoing process, because many a time we have seen that even after independence, the older structures continue, the older structures of oppression, the older structures of power that had been established during the colonial rule. Those structures of power, those structures of exploitation continue to exist in the post-colonial era or the decolonial era. After independence, post-independence, those structures still continue, right? Decolonization means then the dismantling of hidden aspects of those institutional and cultural forces that had been established by the colonialist power and that remain even after political independence has been achieved, right? Initially, in many places in the colonized world, the process of resistance was conducted in terms of in terms or institutions appropriated from the colonizing culture itself. So the system that the colonizing culture established, okay, it can be schools, it can be universities, it can be colleges, it can be other places, offices. Those systems became sites of resistance. Okay, so the colonized started to work for his or her freedom by using the very structures which were established by the colonizer. Colonizer যে স্ট্রাকচারগুলো এস্টাবলিশ করেছিল অপ্রেস করার জন্য, সেই স্ট্রাকচারগুলোকেই ইউজ করতে শুরু করে colonized যে সে, to get freedom. বুঝতে পেরেছো? So this was only to be expected since early nationalists had been educated to perceive themselves as potential heirs to European political systems and models of culture. This occurred not only in settler colonies where the white colonial elite was a direct product of the system, but even in colonies of occupation as well. So that's why Macaulay's infamous minutes of 1835 on Indian education, which proposed the deliberate creation in India of a class of brown white men who would be educated to value European culture above their own. Okay, so this was the process through which colonialism worked. This was the process that originated in the imperialist mind, that we need to first establish certain places, certain buildings, certain sites which would culture this very idea of superiority and inferiority, where the colonial culture would be presented as superior, where the colonized culture would be always presented as inferior, right? So you remember, you do know about this infamous minute that Thomas Babington Macaulay wrote. So this was the British policy actually, okay, during the early part of 19th century. What was the policy? That in India schools and universities would be built to create these brown white men. They would be racially brown but intellectually approximating white men, because they would be educated in that way. They would know English, they would know writing, they would actually get alienated from their own culture day by day. And this very sight of creating these brown white men would try to project European culture as the culture, as a culture that is to be revered. So consequently, political independence did not necessarily mean a wholesale freeing of the colonized from colonialist values. For these, along with political, economic and cultural models, persisted in many cases after independence. So these schools, colleges still existed, though they became sites of resistance as well, because the resistance were coming primarily from those brown white men only. See the paradox, see the irony, যে যেই ধরনের লোকেদের তারা ক্রিয়েট করার চেষ্টা করলো to make them act as interface between Europe and India or British and India, তাদের একটা ইন্টারমিডিয়ারি বানাবার চেষ্টা করলো তাদের. They were the intermediaries between the British and Indians who are illiterate or not educated in terms of English education system. That particular class would be facilitated by this buffer between the colonial go-between, the buffer class, who would be those brown white men. Okay, so tara, they would act as buffers. তারা কিন্তু বাফারের মতো কাজ করবে between the white men and the brown men. ঠিক আছে, এটা ক্রিয়েট করলো, কিন্তু এই বাফাররাই পরে রিভোল্ট করছে, এখান থেকেই রেজিস্ট্যান্সটা এসেছিল। কিন্তু তার মানে এই নয় যে সব কিছু, মানে যখন থেকে ফ্রি হলো, when there were independence, everything changed suddenly, because it is not possible, because by that time there has been several institutions already working, people are graduating from those institutions, they are reading things, they are knowing things through those institutions, and those institutions, those knowledge systems cannot be debunked, cannot be de-established or deconstructed overnight. এগুলো থেকেই গেল। সিন্স কলোনিয়াল সিস্টেম জেনারেটেড এ কম্প্রাডোর ক্লাস, এই ক্লাসটাকে বলা হচ্ছে কম্প্রাডোর ক্লাস, এই মাঝামাঝি যারা কাজ করছে, মানে তারা কলোনাইজার তো নন, কলোনাইজডও নন, মাঝামাঝি যারা কাজ করছেন এদের দুজনের মধ্যে, এদেরকে কম্প্রাডোর ক্লাস বলা হয়। In the colonies, colonialism survived several attempts at actual decolonization. Okay, so actual decolonization happens with or it germinates within this comprador class. Also, it is not possible for the once colonized nations communities to go back to their pre-colonial pristine state. Revival of the pre-colonial culture is a myth. Therefore, actual decolonization is an ongoing process. We cannot actually say that no, from today is 15th August 1947, now onwards we would completely go anti-British. We would be completely abhorring, uprooting all the things that they have established. Then there would be complete chaos. যে বিল্ডিংগুলো বানিয়ে গেছিল, যে স্কুল কলেজ বানিয়ে গেছিল, সবার এগুলো পুড়িয়ে দিতে হবে, ধ্বংস করে দিতে হবে। এবং তাতে কি হবে? তাতে তো ইন্ডিয়ারই ক্ষতি, কারণ ওগুলো তো ইন্ডিয়ানরাই বানিয়েছিল, ওগুলো ইন্ডিয়ার টাকা দিয়েই বানানো হয়েছিল। হ্যাঁ, তো এখন যদি আমরা ইফ উই সাডেনলি সে দ্যাট নো হোয়াট এভার দে হ্যাভ বিল্ড উই উড ডিস্ট্রয় ইট ফার্স্ট, সো হাওড়া ব্রিজ উড বি কমপ্লিটলি ডিস্ট্রয়েড, দ্যাট পার্টিকুলার বিল্ডিং উড বি কমপ্লিটলি ডিস্ট্রয়েড। তো প্রত্যেকটা এরকম বড় বড় মনুমেন্টস, ভিক্টোরিয়া মেমোরিয়াল হোক, যাই হোক, প্রত্যেকটা জিনিসকে ধ্বংস করতে হবে এবং স্কুল কলেজেস ধ্বংস করতে হবে সবার আগে। এবার স্কুল কলেজে তো ভালো লোকেরা পড়ছে এখন, তারা তো যুদ্ধ করছে না, তারা তো কাউকে মারছে না, তারা তো শিখে নিয়ে ইন্ডিয়াকে আগে নিয়ে যাওয়ার চেষ্টা করছে। দে আর অ্যাকচুয়ালি ওয়ার্কিং ফর দ্য বেটারমেন্ট অফ ইন্ডিয়ান্স। সো ওয়াই শুড বি de-establish or completely debunk, dismantle those institutions? We cannot do it. So that's why decolonization is a very complex process. তার মানে কি ব্রিটিশদের ওই পদ্ধতিটাই কন্টিনিউ করব? So then do we have only one alternative to continue with the colonial system in terms of education? No, we have to take another path. We have to take a middle course, and that middle course is a very complex one. That middle course is a course which would lead you to decolonization. So decolonization is an ongoing process, and post-colonialism is concerned with all these, primarily with this question: how colonialism operated, how decolonization can be achieved. এই দুটো কোয়েশ্চেন নিয়ে পোস্ট কলোনিয়ালিজম ডিল করে, যেখানে অল্টারনেটিভ দেওয়ার চেষ্টা করছে কলোনিয়ালিজমের। যেমন প্যাট্রিয়ার্কির अगेंस्टे কোন ডিসকোর্স ফাইট করছে, কোন মুভমেন্ট ফাইট করছে? ফেমিনিজম, তাই না? ফেমিনিজম ইজ अगेंस्ट প্যাট্রিয়ার্কি। In the same way, post-colonialism is trying to initiate the process of decolonization by providing alternatives, providing resistance to colonial discourses, colonialism and imperialism. বুঝতে পেরেছো? ইম্পিরিয়ালিজম, কলোনিয়ালিজম বুঝতে পেরেছো? পোস্ট কলোনিয়ালিজম হচ্ছে ডিকোলোনাইজেশনের দিকে নিয়ে যাচ্ছে, ইম্পিরিয়ালিজম কলোনিয়ালিজমের বাইরে গিয়ে। ইম্পিরিয়ালিজমের থেকে, কলোনিয়ালিজমের থেকে যে বাইরে কিছু ঘটতে পারে, হ্যাঁ, সেটার কথা পোস্ট কলোনিয়ালিজম বলছে। পোস্ট কলোনিয়ালিজম আরেকটা সিস্টেম অফ আইডিয়াস। ফর ইনস্টেন্স প্যাট্রিয়ার্কি, প্যাট্রিয়ার্কাল সিস্টেমের বাইরে কি হচ্ছে? ফেমিনিজম নিয়ে যাওয়ার চেষ্টা করছে। হ্যাঁ, তেমনি পোস্ট কলোনিয়াল স্টাডিজের ক্ষেত্রে পোস্ট কলোনিয়ালিজম স্টাডিজ ইজ প্রিসাইজলি ট্রাইং টু ডু দিস। Okay, it is trying to suggest alternatives from colonialism and imperialism. Okay, we'll stop here because we have to take presentations.